record button. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you can see my screen soon. Okay, there. Right. So the idea here is let's think about what will typically happen in your semester test or exam. And these next few weeks, all we're going to do is we're going to keep going through examples and examples of typically what to expect in a semester test or an exam. And if we really had to go through what does a semester test or exam typically entail, there are a number of things. Okay, so number one, we are going to ask you to define at least 2 record structures. All right, at least 2. Maybe there might be 3, but I think 2 to 3. So I would say 2 to 3 record structures, just to make sure we are all on the same page. So that's defining it. Now afterwards, you're going to have to declare an array of one of these 2 record structures. Okay, and why only one of them? Can anyone perhaps share or guess why there will only be an array of one of these 2 record structures? Why not both? I mean, if we're going to define both of them, why am I only asking you must declare an array of one of the 2? Any ideas? This is a tutorial, so please try to be a little bit interactive here. I know some of you are chatting and saying yes, no, but try and guess. I mean, if you have absolutely no idea, it's okay. You can actually indicate that you don't know. Not the end of the world. Okay. Yes. All right. So FEB and FEFU saying because it's record structure into another, and that's exactly it. Okay. But we'll see how that works. So for some of you who are not sure what I mean by that, that's okay. We'll go through that. Okay, so that's declare an array. Then number 3, after you've declared an array of one of these 2 record structures, you're going to use this array of record structures to store user inputs. All right, so you will ask the user, listen, please give us data, give us information for us to put into this program. And once you've got that, you will perform a number of calculations. And these calculations will be, and these are not calculations that are very complicated, or at least we like to believe it is not very complicated. So the one will be to do with adding or multiplying. So basically, your simple mathematical, your simple calculations, multiplication or division or subtraction, are of an array of values. So there will be multiple values. We're not going to ask you just to add one number up. We're going to ask you to add a number of numbers up or multiply a number of numbers. And the whole idea of us asking you to do this is, remember that when you're working with an array of record structures, these record structures will contain multiple values, and the idea is we want to combine these values into some answer. So we want to compact all these values into a single value, and then the next thing we want to do besides this adding multiplication is we might ask you, well, not might, we will definitely ask you to find a maximum or a minimum. Okay, now this variation, there are 4 possibilities. Okay, so we can find a maximum value in an array. So in other words, there are multiple values we want you to look at, and we want you to find the maximum. Or we might ask you to find the minimum, or, and I think many of you can guess what the other 2 possibilities is, which maximum or which minimum. Do you all understand the difference between me asking you what is the maximum and which is the maximum? I'm sure you do. All right, but if there's anything you don't understand, then you feel free to ask. I'm not sure you go, no, we don't. I'm not sure if you mean you don't know what is the difference between what is the maximum and which is the maximum. I've then got 2 responses afterwards that say yes, which is the index. Right, so remember that if we have an array, so let me create an array here. So over here, let me let me use this. So here you have an array, right? And then in this array, there's multiple values in here. So this one is 10, this one is 7, this is 6, 3, 2, and 22. If I ask you all, what is the maximum? I think you all can tell me that the maximum is 22, right? Right. But if I ask you which one is the maximum, then you have to go, well, that's index 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6. So you would tell me that the value which is the maximum is, it is the 6th element is the maximum. Does this make sense? Still following? Right. Okay. So let's go back to here. So you're going to have, and you all know how to do that, right? And if you're not very comfortable with knowing how to do that, it's fine because it comes with practice. Please do yourselves a favor, practice, practice, practice. Now, my personal strategy for finding a maximum or finding which maximum or finding a minimum or finding which maximum is, number one, start by memorizing the algorithm. Because remember, there's a number of steps that you must apply in order to find the algorithm. Once you know what the algorithm is and you memorize it, you know this is exactly how it works, then you should practice as many different variations of finding a maximum or minimum as possible, because then that will help you to determine how to take that algorithm and apply it to your specific example. And the reason why I say specific example is because you don't actually know how the record structure is going to be put together. And depending on how it's put together.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Do apologize for my being late. We had an issue with Blackboard earlier on. Can you guys hear me?
Mr. Labia, yes, we can hear you, but it's fine. I'll take this session. You can give your class. It's okay. I don't know, unless the class here wants to go through your class. I suppose you can have a quick vote. Class, group people. Yes, no. Do you want Mr. Labia to continue? Okay, all right. So Mr. Labia, you're fine. You're fine. They're playing favorites now. For right now.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you earlier on, but yeah, we're just finishing up the past paper we started with last week, and we haven't gotten really far with it so far. So yeah, we can continue, and then we'll do these type of record structure stuff next week going forward. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me share my screen with you so we all be on the same page.
Okay, I will stop my screen. Are you coming online? You continue. Okay, all right. So Mr. Labia will continue with this. I think so that we can all be on the same page. Finish that. All right. So you guys go ahead, and then we will do something similar to what I started next week. Okay. Enjoy your day.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we had continued a little bit with the class that's in person last week. This is the paper that we were working on, and here is the accompanying code that we worked on together. We hadn't really done anything from here. The only thing we did today was we displayed the time per lap from the input, and we had a bit of an error last week when running this line of code because it gave us a null reference exception, and the reason for that was because we were resizing only the last racer's time per lap, and we've since corrected that to having each and every racer's time per lap resized. Okay, if we look at the question though, by resizing this, if I run it one more time, if I do input, you have how many races? Let me say 2 and 3 laps. You do have that. Race, the name of racer R1. And what is the sponsor? S1. How many? 1, 2, 3. And racer 2, R2. How many? What's the sponsor? S1. And 4, 5, and 6. Okay, there's the test data. but we haven't really done everything that the question asked us to do. So if you look at the question again, question says we need to display the name of the racer, the sponsor's name, and the time per lap. So there's two ways to do this. If you look at our grid already, or the way it's set up, we've got a place to show the racer, right? We've got racer 1, racer 2, racer 3, and so forth. So in order to display the racer name, you could easily just override that information with the racer's name. And then you have actually displayed the racer's name. As for the sponsor, you would need to create a place to put that information in there. So, and this is where a design becomes very important. So if I had designed my code prior to starting to write the code, I would have picked up the fact that I would need 1 or 2 extra columns in my grid, and I would have accommodated for that from the get-go, right? But now, because I'm only seeing it as I am answering the questions, I'd have to restart or fix code that's already existing. And I don't know if you've seen me do that in the past, but it's painful to do. Have you seen when I'm trying to alter code that's already there to fit a certain narrative? When you change one line from the code that was already working, chances of breaking something in the code that was working is high. So if you do your design and you know exactly what you're going to have to do, it becomes a little bit easier. But let's see if I can manipulate the code that exists currently to accommodate for that. So as I said, we're basically going to override racer over here with the number. So if I go over here, as soon as I have the name, and instead of racer, I am just going to say racers at r dot name. That's quite easy. As soon as I have the racer's name, I'm going to override it on there. Let's see if this works. No, it will not work because I misspelled races. Let me stop that. Don't worry, we haven't done the attendance in the physical class as well. I will do the attendance at the end of the class. So let's see if I say 1 and 1, doesn't really matter. What I'm trying to see is if racer goes away, R1. So there we go. Instead of racer, it now says R1. So I have effectively displayed the name of the racer. Now what I need to do is display the sponsor of the racer. So over here, what I would do is we've got laps, racer, you've got average. Sorry, I just want to see. Just want to see that form once again. I'm the way I've set it up once more. Okay, so over here, it would make sense to have the sponsor here, right? Just before lap 1, to have the sponsor's details there. So I've seen where I want to put them just before lap 1. So I'll just copy that because it's, and put it on top there. This would be 1. That would be sponsor. And then because I put it in 1, I'll then need to make L plus 1. It will say lap 1, lap 2, lap 3. That's fine. But this will no longer be 1 because we have used 1. This will be 2. I am guessing 2, 3, and 4. Let's see if that tracks. Two and 3. Okay, there we go. But it does say everything works, but there's one missing. There's flag missing, and that's because I did not increase the number of rows that my overall grid has. So do you see what I'm saying? That altering becomes a bit of a problem, then I'll put it 1 over there plus, just to kind of represent what it's going to look like on the actual grid. We've got the sponsor, then we've got the number of laps, then we've got the one for the label, then we've got the last 3 for average, rating, and flag. And this is something that takes some time. Whoever's listening to music, please go do it outside. Preferably, thank you. It's still going on. If your music is more interesting than I am, please listen to it outside. Input 2 and 3. Oh, I said 32 for some reason, but we still have sponsor over there. If you scroll down, I can't scroll down because but you get the point. The error hasn't popped up anymore. Let's do it again with proper inputs. Two and 3. And there you go. We've got the sponsor, we've got the average, all of that, but we haven't actually displayed the sponsor. So we need to display the sponsor information as well. This would be placed in grid, row, no, not row 0, row R, and column number of laps. No, column 1, that's fine. And this should say races at R dot sponsor. Okay, there's one see an error with this code. Something that's gonna go horribly wrong here. Yeah. Don't display the sponsor name properly. Think it will. Think so. Okay, let's go back up and see where we're displaying our sponsor. So sponsor is in row 1, column 0. So you are actually correct. Should be row 1. Yes, it should be row 1 and column R. Okay, it's not too much of an issue. Is that the same issue you had? But we still have a problem here. Does everyone understand why I had to switch it from 1 and R to R and 1? Who doesn't? Show of hands. Okay, so I'm going to assume because there are no hands that we're all on the same page. Okay, but there's another problem. Can anyone identify it? Where am I displaying my, let me show you what the error is. Two and 3, cool. Racer R1, R1, S1, S1. Time per lap, 10, 20. That was a weird number I put in. But did you see the issue? The issue is if I'm going to then use that first row for sponsor, when I'm displaying my actual times, I need to up them up by 1. So it'd have to be L plus 1, so that to make sure it doesn't start at 1, but it starts at 2 going onwards. Okay, so let's have a look. After fixing it, if I said 2 and 3, then what is the R1? Sponsor 1, 1, 2, 3. And R2, sponsor 2, 4, 5, and 6. So there we go. Now we've got the name. I could even say 00 and yeah, let's do that. 0 and 0. And this should say and if I run it again, we have the same 2 and 3 and racer 1, sponsor 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, racer 2, sponsor 2, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, there you go. Now we have 00 saying racer's name, just to give that a title as well. And all of our information has been input and displayed onto the grid. Are there any questions with question A of this past paper? None. Okay, so let's move on and see what else the question would like us to do. And if we read on there, it says for B, determine store in 4 and display the average time per racer. So average time per racer. In order to get an average, we need a total, right? Let's rename that. And remember, you need to rename all your, let me save that. No, I was told that trick would work. So whenever your code does that, just close it and reopen it again. It means it didn't load correctly. One of the reasons mine does this is because I am now Visual Studio is not responding. Is because I'm running it on the cloud, so some of the files may not have downloaded or loaded correctly. But simply put, if you just close it and reopen it again, it should load correctly. Let's see if that is the case. There you go. There's my properties loaded properly. This would be average, and the name would be BTN AVG, and let's double click on the button. And put it at the bottom. And then my first thing would be to say question B. And what is question B asking me to do? Question B is basically asking me to calculate the average per, read it again. Determine, store, and display the average time for the racer. So average time per racer. So if it's average, we're trying to find out the average for each and every racer. Because we're trying to find the average for each and every racer, we need to have a for loop that goes through one racer to the last racer. So we'd have no, why did it jump up there? As integer equal 1 to number of races and racer. Do we have, so we do agree that in order to get an average, we need a total, right? Do we have a place in our, let me just collapse these. Is there a place in our structure for total? No, there isn't. So we can't store total in there. Did the question ask us to store total? No, it didn't. It just wants us to store the average, right? So with that being said, with those pieces of information, I can safely assume that I can create a total, a local variable total, to use it for the sake of calculating the total, and then use that total to calculate the average. I don't need to store this total, so that should be fine. So I should say dim total as integer, just making sure that it is integer. Time per lapse is double, so this would need to be a double. But total as double, since we're going through each and every racer, what are we actually calculating? We're calculating that we need to, in order to get the average of average time per lap, we need to know what times the total time for all the laps. So we need a for loop that goes through all the laps. Next lap, and this is where we can say total is equal to races at R dot time per lap at L. There we have it, and we need to display this information. So if we need to display this information, that's the wrong subroutine. No, this is just the total. So we don't really, after getting the total, I can then say average, which is races at R dot average is equal to total divided by number of laps. That makes sense? So in line 82, I'm actually adding up all of the lap 1, lap 2, lap 3. That should actually be plus equals to make sure that all of those values get into total, and then average would be total divided by number of laps. We need to display that average, place in grid, number of laps plus 2, or convert to string, average. Good. Who sees an issue with this code? All of 2 people. So the rest of you, what do you think? You think this is going to work flawlessly? Again, I've got up to 3 people. Some online people, but let's see. Let's see what happens. So input 2, and actually let me do this. Good. So average is 10. So that would be 10 divided by 1 is 10. So is that the right answer? Yes, it is. So there's basically nothing wrong with my code. Right? So should we move on to the next question? No, we shouldn't. Why not? Yeah? Okay, but why do we need to initialize our total to 0 if my answer is correct? Good. So the issue is your test data is important, ladies and gentlemen. Looking at how you're testing your program is important, because if that was my only test, I would have said this code is working and I've moved on to the next one. But in actual fact, if you tested with the right amount of data, it should be able to show you the pitfalls of your code. If you remember, yesterday we did that whole test data thing to say when you're using test data, make sure you are testing out every path of your code. Every possible output that your code is capable of doing, you need to test out. So with 1 and 1, it works. But if I do 2 and 3, and it's R1, sponsor 1, and 1, 2, 3, R2, sponsor 2, 4, 5, and 6. You notice that when I say average, that is 2 is correct, but is 7 correct? Well, I don't know at this point if it's correct or not, but from the code, it should not be correct. And the reason, as the gentleman in front mentioned, let's look at this code line by line. Line 79, I'm declaring total, right? Say for argument's sake, I'm declaring total and it's equal to 0. Okay. Then for each racer and for each lap, total plus equals racers lap 1, lap 2, lap 3, right? If total is 0 and I give it lap 1's information, it's going to be equal to lap 1. And then I add lap 2 to that, lap 3 to that, and I say the average is total divided by the number of laps and display that. It's going to give me the right answer. Okay. But when I go for next racer, if the previous average is 5, for argument's sake, when I go to the next racer, when I go back to line 80 and then 81, at 82, when I'm getting racer 2's first lap, what is the value of total? Yeah. It's going to be 5, right? Which is the total from racer 1. Which means when I'm calculating racer 2's total, it's going to add on to racer 1's total, racer 3. So my averages are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and incorrect and incorrect and incorrect. And once again, I have seen these type of questions on Discord where people say, my first answer is correct, but the rest are wrong. This is usually the reason why your first answer is correct, but the rest are wrong, because you're building on top of that first answer. Okay, how do we solve that? Every time I get to a new racer, what I would like to do is set total to 0. So it will calculate the total, calculate the average, display that average. When we get back to 4R, first thing I do is reset total back to 0, do the calculation, display, reset total to 0, and so forth and so forth. Okay, let's run this code again and see if we get the same answer. Input 2 and 3, R1, S1, 1, 2, 3, R2, S2, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. Average. Now we have 5. We have 5 and 2. In the last one, we had 2 and 7, which means the 7 was the addition of the 2. It had 2 on top of it. So if we had more, the next one would have been 7 plus whatever that actual answer is. So to avoid that, you need to reset total to 0. Any questions? With question B, yes. Can I try using? Double examples. What do you? Okay, that takes longer to input, but I can do it. Really shouldn't change much. 2 and 3. Racer 1, sponsor 1, 10.25, 12.98, 4.76, R2, sponsor 2, 11, 12.988, 13.90. The only difference with these double numbers is Do you know what the answer is going to be? Do you know what the average is going to be? No. Again, that's a lesson that goes back to the lecture we had yesterday of test data. So if you're testing out your program with rubbish, you're going to get rubbish. And it's going to be very difficult for you to see whether or not it is working. Okay, that's why you need to have test data that you know, if I give it this is what I'm expecting out of it. So if you're going to test it out with doubles, then that's fine, but have actual doubles where you know the answer to. I don't know what average this is going to give me. So for all I know at this point, it's giving me an answer. At what level do I know, what trust level do I have that the answer it's giving me is correct? Do I know the answer to 10.25, 12.98, and all of those? No, I don't. Do you get the point I'm trying to make? Yeah. So in future, that's what you need to do. Okay. Any other questions? So why did you ask for the doubles?
Because for my first seeing that the number for varies in double, right? I'm mentioning like 10.03, it should just write 10.
If you write 10.03, it'll just write 10.
Just write 10.
Did you format the output?
Yes, I did.
Then you formatted it to just write 10.
But I did the format for the right format to input a code. Then I did like 0.0.
So don't put, so format is different to, so format, average, then I would say 0.00. I don't think it's a, let's see. Come on. It still shouldn't be a thing. Oh, I see what I did there. Okay. 0.00, and let's say start. There you go. Gave me 2 decimal points. But I think the issue is, if you use 0.00, it works, but 0.00, I don't think is the same command. So if you do 0.00, let's try it again. So I do know in the slides it's 0.00, which is an actual full stop. 1 and 2, rates are 1, sponsor 1, and 10.23, 11.89. Average, there you go. It's not the same. So 0.00 is not the same as 0.00. Yeah, so the command you need to use when you're formatting is 0.00. Okay, does that answer your question? That's the difference. Any other questions with question B? None. Okay, needs to be within. Okay, the answers I'm getting online are the same. Then we move on to question C. Question C says, for each lap, determine, store, and display the average time per lap. This is the sum of the races divided by the, okay. Average time per lap. We discussed this last week as well. Is it supposed to be inside my record structure? There's a question online that says, so when we write our test data on paper, we include names and ratings and etc. Only the calculations. So if you attended class yesterday, you would have seen you enter all of that information. You show us the inputs, you show us the outputs as well. Because there's no point in you just displaying the calculations, because some of the calculations do depend on the input. So for argument's sake, in this case, we are not asking you to do anything with the sponsor's name or the name of the racer, but in other instances, we may say display the name of the racer with the highest ratio or something along those lines. So if you don't have that racer's name, what are you going to put as the output? So you need to show everything that you're going to calculate there. Okay, so my question still stands. For C, is that supposed to be in our record structure? So where are we going to store that information? Because the question does say for each lap, determine, store, and display. Where do you foresee us storing this information? Is there space in our record structure for it? Is there? No, there isn't. How can you tell if something is to be stored in the record structure? In an informatics 100 question. It tells you, for instance, if you look at B, it says display and store in 4. It tells you exactly where you need to store that information. But C doesn't say displayed in 5 or something like that. But if we look at 5, 5 is rating. And if we look at 6, it's flag. So you should then tell from that that your answer or whatever it is that you're calculating should not be stored in your record structure, because there is no space for it in the record structure. Why is it not in the record structure? Anyone care to tell me why it's not represented in the record structure? Why should it be stored in a different place? If no one's going to answer my questions, I'm going to end the tutorial here. Yes? Okay, so it's for each and every racer and not just that one racer. Meaning it has no business being inside the record structure. I think the example I gave last week was if we were calculating your average marks in the practicals, we would add up all your practical marks, divide them by the number of practicals, and get your specific average, which should be in your record. It's something that could be in your academic record for argument's sake. But if I wanted to know what is the overall average for practical 1, for argument's sake, practical 1 has to do with all of you as a group. Is that something we can put in your record? Would you like to see in your student account or in your, what is this called, academic record, where it says this is the mark that you got, but this is the mark that the whole class got for a certain subject? No, that information is not relevant to you as a student, so it should not be included in your record. Same thing here. We are looking at racer information. So each and every racer has a name, has a sponsor, has a time, has an average. But if we wanted to know, for argument's sake, what is the average what is the average time per lap? We need to add up everyone's time in that lap and display that overall lap 1's average time is this. It does not belong in the record. So let me see if I've actually... So I have not accounted for that either. So we need to account for it. So we need another average on the other side. So just copy this, put it on top here, and this would be row 0, column number of races plus 1. So now again, because I hadn't created or completed a design, I am editing my code as I'm going. This is not something you want to do, ladies and gentlemen, because you have 3 hours, and you have 3 hours for a reason. So if at every question you go to, you need to go back and redo some stuff that you've already done, you are eating into precious time that you don't have. So just plan it out all together. When you start coding, have an idea of exactly what you're going to do. So we need a new one there and one there as well. So let's see. Yeah, online they say average time per lap has no relation to each racer, which is correct. So input 1 and 2. So there we've got racer 1, we've got average. Okay, so the more races we have, we'll have more information there. And with average, we need to create a place to put that average. So, oh, we have already done that. Lap average as double, private lap average as double. So to get the lap average, I could calculate it in here as well, but let me just get a, well, it is a average still. So what I can do is make it as a function maybe. Let's see if I can do that. Private function, calculate average. What I need to give it is a total need to give it as a total as double and as double and function. So if I do have that total, can then say total, no, can then say return should return a double. And that's about it. But the issue is the for loops needed to calculate that are different. So you'll notice that I start with a for R loop and then for L loop. That's for getting the total for each racer. But if I want to get the total for each lap, I need to start with lap first. So it's still in the same button. I'll then do this to symbolize the two different. So I have, so it still wouldn't be a smart idea to do it in the same button, but I'm just trying to show you the difference in the calculation. So for L as integer equal 1 to number of laps, next lap. For R integer equal 1 to number of races, next racer, and let's dim another total. Equals 0. And over here we can have lap total plus equals races at R dot time lapse at L. Time per lap at L. And then the actual calculation would be lap average at L. No, lap average at L is equal to calc average, parse it, total, parse it, number of races. Okay, and then we'd have to display it. And that would be, where did we display that first one? Average 0. So it should be L, number of races plus 1, and format. Okay, can you see the difference between these two totals, or these two average calculations? The first one is we are calculating per racer, which is why the R loop is on the outside. And then we're saying racer 1, lap 1, 2, 3, add those up. And that's how we're getting that total and that average. In the second one, we're getting per lap. So which is why we start with lap. So we say lap 1, racer 2, racer 3. Add those up and get a total for the lap and get the average for that. What usually confuses students is if you look at line 98 and line 98 and line 88. They look the same, right? They're basically identical, besides the fact that we are using a different total variable. But the difference in them is how it's going to count. In line 88, R will run once L will run maybe 3 times for every time R runs once, if we had 3 laps. Again, in the opposite, if we had 2 races, then races would run, R would run twice for every time L runs once. So basically, we just swap those two around. To say if we want a total for races, we start with races, then say for racer 1, lap 2, lap 3. That's what racer 1 did. But if we want to know about the laps, we're going to say lap 1, racer 1, 2, and 3. Do you get the difference between those two? Okay, so let's see. So input racer 1. Otherwise, I needed to input how many races they were. Went a bit ahead of myself there. So 1 and 2, racer 1, sponsor 1, and 1, 2. What happened there? 2 races. Okay, what is the name of racer 1? Oh, screwed it up, sorry. Start that again. Two and 3, racer 1, sponsor 1, 1, 2, 3, racer 2, sponsor 2, 4, 5, and 6. So averages, we have a null reference exception, reference not set to an instance of an object. This is the same error we had in the beginning, if you remember correctly. What does this error mean? Yes. We did not redeem lap average, and that is because we started editing the code, so we never thought to do that. Once again, this is why you shouldn't fix code as you are going. but let's resize lap average. Lap average to number of laps. Input 2 and 3, racer 1, sponsor 1, 1, 2, 3, racer 2, sponsor 2, 4, 5, and 6. Average, we've got 5, 7.5, 7.5, 7.5. Yeah, that's not correct. Firstly, what's the issue? The issue is the placement, right? Where we are displaying it. It's gone a bit higher up than it needs to be, and everything is 7.5. So I can fix the higher up by saying L, that should be L plus 1. Yeah, R plus 1, L plus 1. What else? What other problem do we have? Yeah, at the back there. Okay, I put total instead of lap total, which is why the average is the same on all three of them. It's one of the issues. So typical copy and paste issue. Okay, what other issue do we have? Yes. We did not initialize lap total to 0. So same thing that we did above, we need to initialize lap total to 0. Isn't it supposed to be plus 2? No, just plus 1 is fine. Why do you think it's supposed to be plus 2? Which one? Are you talking about L or number of races? Let's have a look. L is supposed to be just plus 1. Because remember, we're trying to say if L starts at 1, we want to say plus 1. So if this is 1, 1 plus 1 will be 2 already. So it will start at row 2 instead of row 1. Let's have a look. There we go. We still have 2 and 5 on there. 5 divided by 2, 2.5, that makes sense. 7 divided by 2, that makes sense. Yeah, 9 divided by 2, 4.5. So all of them do add up as far as the averages are concerned. But the reason why we needed to do plus 1, if we just kept it as it is, it would have been here at